president and founder of Linchpins of Liberty, and that is a Tea Party-like organization, correct?
Well, actually, it's an American leadership development enterprise. Our motto is to challenge the imagination of the rising generation, and we do that by mentoring high school and college students in conservative political philosophy. We don't have Tea Party or Patriot in our name, but we share similar ideas. We reject the expansion of the federal government beyond its legitimate authority, and we jealously guard human liberty.
And so you were going for a 501c3.
That's correct, which is different than a lot of the organizations. Most of them were C4 or an educational institution.
And they wanted to know what, when you put in for that status in order to acquire the grants that have been pledged to you.
Oh my goodness. Well, in addition to about 95 interrogatories, one of the most inflaming questions and insulting and unconstitutional, keep in mind that I work with high school and college students, some of which are minors. The IRS wanted me to identify the students that I was teaching, to provide details of what I was teaching them. Then, as late as May 6th, after this whole story broke, the IRS continued the process. Some people may remember that Steve Miller testified before Congress that this had been stopped.
Yeah.
Well, it has not been stopped, because I received a letter 10 days ago, and the IRS was now asking not only for the identity of the students, but they wanted to know the location where I was teaching them.
So, Kevin, how long have you guys been delayed in getting this?
28 months and counting.
28 months. And how has that hindered your leadership institute?
We had to go completely dormant. In fact, when I got my first letter, I've received 3 substantive letters from the IRS, in addition to some letters that say we've received your application. And over that 28-month period, I realized as long ago as May 2011 that I was a target. I did not know that there were other organizations at that time, and it was pretty discouraging. I had been promised a $30,000 grant from a reputable nonprofit, and the executive director promised based on receiving status. The executive director told me that in his 25 years of granting money to foundations and nonprofits, he has never seen anything like this. He had looked at my application, he said it was sound, he said this should have rolled through in 2 or 3 months. And here I was. At that time, a year later, he said, we have to pull the grant until you get status. So that's what I lost.
So you're thinking you're going through this alone. And now all of a sudden, as revelations start to come forward, did you know about the IG report that was investigating? Because most didn't.
Well,
that was investigating the IRS for their own actions?
Yeah, that was actually, thanks to Mark Levin, right? And Landmark Legal Foundation actually pushed that forward. But it did go silent for a while. Most people in the public didn't know that was going on. We talked about it in the summer of 2012, but at that time it was an administrative process. The ACLJ was handling on our behalf, and I had pretty much considered this wasn't going to be resolved until the Obama administration was finished. And lo and behold, 3 weeks ago, Lois Lerner comes out with this incomplete apology, and now we've got the attention of everybody.
Now it's worse than anyone thought.
Far worse.
Yeah. Kevin Kookogey is with us right now. He's president and founder of Linchpins of Liberty, and his company's been on hold. You cannot say, Kevin, if things are going the way you would think they would go for your institute, that with the conservative principles that you're putting forward, that you cannot say that you did not affect the election at all. Oh. I mean, especially when you look at the other Tea Party friends in which you know that in other organizations, you can't say that the election wasn't affected.
Well, exactly. Not specifically through my organization. For me, because I'm an educational institution, I can't get involved in elections, never could, but that doesn't mean that the other organizations who were targeted with the same letters were not completely taken out of the election.
Right. So does this? On what level does this bother you?
At a level foundational to the country, because we were singled out based on our ideas, Brian. If the government can threaten our property rights, James Madison said that we have a property right in our ideas, and if that threat can be based on what we speak, what we write, or what we think, then we no longer have a government which is of the people, by the people, or for the people. We have a government which is against the people.
So now you find out that this guy Shulman, who was prior to Steve Miller, who was appointed by Bush, but we later found out that Karl Rove did some research. Said, why did Bush appoint this guy? They said he was a compromise candidate, that Max Baucus would only approve a certain amount of guys. No one knew anything about him. He visits President Bush one time, but when it comes to President Obama, he's got 157 visits. He only remembers one, and it was the Easter egg roll.
Exactly. So we can strike that one off the list.
But for one thing, to answer like that to a congressional committee is insulting, is condescending. There's a smugness there that I didn't think you should do with the respect, if you respect the American system. Mark Everson was the IRS commissioner when Shulman took over. Here's what he thinks of this whole thing. Cut 6.
What we did do at the time was we had, you may remember this, Bill, in the 04 and the 06 election cycle, there were allegations that C3s and churches were organizing on the conservative side in Ohio, and there are always allegations that inner city churches are politicking for the Democratic side. I did commission a special unit within this same tax-exempt group to look at these allegations. And what I find is so disturbing about the current situation is we spooled up a group and they took a look at these activities. It's not the front end process, the determinations. What happens in Cincinnati is they look at these applications for exempt status when they come in. What I'm talking about is complaints that came in about
that they were violating after the fact.
Last year I testified before the ISA committee, and I expressed a concern about the service being wrapped up in the Affordable Care Act because just the conversation we're having right now, it can create a perception that the IRS's duties have somehow changed to such a degree that they lose their historic independence. And every commissioner knows once you walk in those doors at 1111 Constitution, you've got to assume a total independence.
And that's got to be gone. Because the IRS is now coming to everybody's house when it comes to Obamacare.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the case that came out this week that Chuck Grassley brought attention to. And because you were talking about the brazenness and the blatant arrogance of the administration, they have actually been caught trying to condition status of a pro-life organization in Iowa if this organization would agree not to protest Planned Parenthood. It's a fundamental violation, and so, but it's not. It's the big lie. This is what the communists did, Marxists did. It wasn't about can we nibble around the margins and tell little lies. It's tell such a big lie, make it such a big issue that people can't possibly believe that we're doing this.
And also, you could factor in the story that Dick Durbin had an opponent, and they said, listen, the IRS, Lois Lerner herself said, if you promise not to run again, we'll let you off on this IRS audit.
It's intimidation. It's un-American, and it goes to the core of our First Amendment rights.